So I wanted to take the opportunity to cover something about just a general state of the British steel industry, because obviously it might sound like a sort of mundane thing to cover, but the fact of the matter is that you'd be very unlikely to go a day in your life and not use something that requires steel. And we are Britain, we are the founders of the Industrial Revolution. It's a proud heritage that we managed to start all of this and bring civilization to the world and through such incredible industrious engineering. But I wanted to, before I go into all of that, I should as well myself promote the brand new Islander magazine from the Lotus Eaters. In it, you can find all sorts of wonderful articles by people such as Bo himself, Carl, the academic agent, Nima Parvini, Raw Eggs Nationalist, and yours truly. I've written a piece of my own for it as well. So now that I've mentioned that, oh yes, and you can also go over to the gift shop on the website, and you can find some merch that runs in nice synchronicity with the magazine itself. It's got some wonderful aesthetics to it, and the magazine is also a limited time. So if you want it, when is it? You have to have it ordered it within a few weeks.
I don't know.
Something.
Let us know. Behind the scenes, get us out of this ditch we're in.
Oh, I've been hearing on the podcast that it's up for a few weeks, so buy it now.
You can get end of June.
End of June. So yes,
I think end of June is also when we're planning on getting the issues out to the buyers. So
right.
Make sure to get your pre-orders in.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you. Now from that, so I'll go over to the first part. Thank you. Yes. So back, you can see this is dated the 7th of February. But from the very start of this year, Tata Steel, who own the steelworks, the blast oven furnaces down in Port Talbot in the south of Wales, they've obviously, as you've seen here, there is no way that the blast furnaces can stay, says the chief executive.
Why?
Right. Well, this is where we run into a little bit of schizophrenia within the establishment, because essentially what's happened is Tata, it's very hard to blame them for this. Bear in mind, they're an Indian company, right? They have no sort of loyalty to the United Kingdom on the basis of it, right? They're profit motivated, right? And obviously they would be. They're an international business.
You might want to sit a bit closer to the microphone, just to make sure.
No trouble. But they're an international business. However, we are internally crippling our steel industry, because really this decision to close the blast ovens, which is going to, has and will lose thousands of jobs in the Port Talbot area, is really a product of net zero and the climb towards zero carbon emissions in the United Kingdom, because obviously it goes without saying that these old steelworks produce an awful lot of CO2. Now, within all of this, if I could ask you to go to the next one, Sam. Thank you. It can't help but be noticed by The Guardian, of all people, that there's some hypocrisy in this, because Tata, it's not stopped Tata building blast ovens in India itself. So they take with one hand and give with the other to their own country. And again, it makes sense, because India's not under these self-imposed. I think they are climbing towards net zero themselves. They've agreed to certain treaties tangentially, but
they won't though.
But they won't. Obviously,
they won't.
Hence why they're doing this.
Obviously, what happens when you sell off your domestic industries, especially your domestic manufacturing and industrial industries, to foreign countries, is that you're giving foreign interests the opportunity to completely cripple your own independence as a nation.
Absolutely.
Clearly, that's what's going to happen. That's what empires do. Empires like the British Empire, when we went around our colonies and we basically made it so that they had to get 95% of their economy from the rest of the empire, and we basically made them specialize in one thing. That was purely as a way to make them purely dependent on us. We've played this game before, so the fact that we would bend over and allow other nations to do it to us is just a sign of the complete betrayal of this nation and the weakness that we exhibit on the international stage. How we can present ourselves as any kind of global power when we won't have a steel industry soon?
Right.
Like,
I mean, there is that soft power that David Cameron.
Oh yeah,
raves
sorry.
about.
What was it? Number 2 in soft power,
Right.
which means that London is a big financial centre.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Maybe some people in London can manipulate Indian interest rates somewhere. Fantastic. Yeah, well, they can build things and we can't.
But this is not entirely, to be transparent about it, this is not entirely an issue of just taking things away from Port Talbot, because obviously the government can't be seen to just be closing things. They have to at least be seen to be opening things as well. And so really the whole project under the guise of net zero is to create these electric arc furnaces now. This is the new plan. Now, the important thing to note about the electric arc furnaces is that it's not making steel from scratch. It's not using your iron ore, it's not using your nickel, it's not using your coke. This is a process by which you recycle scrap steel in order to create new steel. The problem with that, as it stands at the moment, is it's a very inconsistent technology. And so there is a real risk that the standard of our steel that we both use domestically for our railways and our military and all those sorts of things will just gradually decline. I mean, obviously technology can get better and I'm sure they're working to refine it, but it suggests that for the time being, we're sort of going to be stuck in limbo with if you could move to the next one for me, in fact, Sam, thank you. When even the Labour Party are pointing out national security concerns, given that they are a national security concern themselves, it's quite rich, really. But he's quite right. Port Talbot closure forces UK to rely on China for steel as MPs raise national security concerns.
The same way that Europe relying on Russian energy was so good for us the second that an international crisis cropped up.
Yes.
I know that the quality of steel really, really matters as well. That is one thing I know a little bit about. You don't just like make steel and then you've got steel. There's many, many different grades of steel, and there's actually like quite a process to it. It's not the easiest thing in the world. During the Great Leap Forward, Mao insisted that everyone would open up a little kiln in their back garden, and that millions of normal Chinese people would start making steel for themselves. And it was ridiculous. It was the most brittle, crappiest quality. It didn't work. You couldn't really build anything with it. You certainly couldn't build like girders or anything like that with it.
Right.
So it's actually like a real industrial process, and you can't half-arse it.
I see.
Right?
Yeah, no, quite.
And so, and it's absolutely one of the things, even going back to the mid-20th century, it's still the case today, that if there's certain things you can't do for yourself, you're in trouble. If you can't field an army for yourself, you're in trouble. If you can't make steel for yourself, you're in trouble. It's the way it's been for a couple hundred years now. It's still the same today. It's not okay to rely on India or China for your steel.
No.
Because if for whatever reason, they decide, we're cutting you off, you're screwed overnight.
But the problem is as well that we actually, as it stands right now with the blast ovens in Scunthorpe, my hometown, which I'll get to a little bit later on, it's that we already import the raw materials as well now. The coke ovens were closed just last year, and we import the iron ore now because either our own supplies in Lincolnshire were of too poor a quality or we'd ran out, whichever it be in the case of the individual mine. But I'd just like to go back to this with he says about the UK to rely on China for steel would be a national security concern. If I could ask you to go to the next one, please. What might be even more of a national security concern than that is having British steel owned by China itself. Would you suggest that's a natural conclusion to come to? Right. So
again, just on your point of the importing of raw materials.
Yes.
Again, there is a benefit to that if you are an enormous empire and you're getting all of these raw materials from places that are colonial administrations which you have the boot over. Because, well, I mean, you're in charge. You can get what you want from them. You can cordon off all of their industry purely to making that raw material for you. Right. It's actually great as a way of meaning that they have no opportunity to grow their own economy naturally while you get to get all of the benefits from that. On the global free trade stage, well, you're just kind of relying on handshakes. You're relying on handshakes and the goodwill of other nations. And I don't know if these people who've done all of this know that the goodwill of other nations is not something that can reliably be counted on.
Yes. Well, no, I mean, your suspicions are quite well founded.
Especially China.
Right. But this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is all a product. It was David Cameron, wasn't it, who wanted closer ties to China and bound us further and further into the Chinese markets. But so there's this...
And wasn't Thatcher the one who opened up the British properties and industries to international markets
yes,
anyway?
That's right, yes. So we're at a position now where, if I could ask you to go to the next one, Sam. Thank you. Actually, I'll skip this one. Thank you. So... Speaking about the handshake deals and the honesty of China, Job fears has minister's more £300 million bailout for Xinge, the Chinese parent group, because British Steel's Chinese owner broke promises to bail the ailing industry. So essentially, the Chinese came in as the highest bidder to the steelworks in Scunthorpe, and which is the other place now in the UK, other than Port Talbot, but obviously the blast ovens are closing in Port Talbot, which leaves Scunthorpe as the last bastion of blast oven furnaces in the UK. And without that, we've basically wiped out our steelmaking capacity. Now, obviously, I am aware that there are other sort of industrial positions up in Redcar and other such, but this is particularly relating to the blast ovens. Now, what's interesting about this is, if I could ask you to scroll down a little bit. Thank you, a bit more. Not been able to figure out how to use this. It's okay. But I think essentially the Chinese offered about 1.2 billion to invest into British steel, into the British steel industry. And when it actually came to them taking over the industry, they basically fell short of that promised investment by just a few hundred million, really, and then had the audacity,
pocket change.
Right, yeah. And then just had the audacity to ask our government to bail out the industry, despite not putting in the money that they promised to put in the first place. If I could ask you to move to the next one, Sam. Thank you. Government support crucial, says British Steel, as unions say the closure of Scunthorpe blast furnaces would be devastating. Now, Scunthorpe, just like Port Talbot, is very much underway with the net zero thing. There is already a commissioned electric arc furnace that is going to go up. And from what I've read of it, it seems to be that once the electric arc furnace is up and operational, the blast furnace will have about 18 months left before they'll turn it off, which once again, like Port Talbot, will leave Scunthorpe in a position where it's people have lost thousands and thousands of jobs. And Scunthorpe is the steelworks is, I think, after Scunthorpe General Hospital, is just the biggest employer in the actual town itself.
So they can look forward to be working in service-based call centres soon, instead.
Possibly.
A vape shop or Greg's. Something.
Turkish barbers, perhaps.
I think vape shops don't generally hire English people. So.
Oh, yeah. Not to Turkish barbers.
Now, obviously...
Or Greg's.
Right. Now, obviously, this is deeply concerning, but I just wanted, before I go on to the next one, I just wanted to touch on something else about this, which is just from my own sort of, dare I suggest, lived experience, which is that within my own living memory, growing up in Scunthorpe, I remember sort of every summer there being a gala, sort of in which the community would come out and the people who worked on the steelworks, and there'd be a fair, and you could buy mugs and you could go on rides, and but this was back when it was owned by Chorus, which was a company that was a merger between British and Dutch, but there was something there to give back to the community as well, right? There was better social bonds than there is now, and that's in my own lifetime. So I can just about remember it. It went on for about 75 years, I think, this gala every summer. And I think the last one was in about 2011. So it's not just the loss of the jobs, but it's the loss it's a loss of pride in the community. It's the knock-on effect that all those job losses will have on the locals who do own the local shops, who the workers get their dinner or the packed lunch from every day. It all just goes in to having a net drain on a town that fundamentally has already struggled for a long time as it is.
The Chinese not going to continue that tradition in Guangdong Jingzhe is not going to keep that going.
My favourite restaurant there,
Hong
actually.
Kong.
But they're not even going to build you a colossal statue of Deng Xiaoping or anything. Come on, guys.
No.
Pull your finger out.
But no, if I could ask you to go to the next one, Sam, thank you. So now it's not all doom and gloom, and I don't want to paint it as that. There are still, because the fact of the matter is that our boys in Scunthorpe make a damn good product. And British steel is still a very highly sought after thing because when you buy British steel that you're buying something, as you say, good quality. It has standards written on it.
Your girders aren't just going to fold on you at the first opportunity.
Right, yeah, it's not made by a million little Chinese children under Mao's dictatorship. And so the multi-million pound contract to make railway for Turkey in Scunthorpe, this is very good. Scunthorpe was actually almost bought out by a Turkish company before the Chinese came along and saved us from the Turks.
Oh, thank God.
And there is just one more thing that I want to highlight in all of this, which is just the last additional factor, sort of just hammering the nail into the coffin, which is that if you could, move to the next one. Thank you, Sam. Now, France to force the EDF to take 8.4 billion euro hit with energy bill cap. Now, this might not seem related at first, but the reason that I bring it up is because the EDF, which is rather incriminatingly stands for Électricité de France, is a full state-owned French energy company that also has command of a lot of our energy here in Britain. A lot of our energy is owned by the French. And so when it was already something like 83% state-owned, but then when the Russians went into Ukraine, the French seized 100% of it just as a precaution so they could have absolute control over the energy prices. And so in France, they put a hard cap on energy prices going up by about 4%, something like that. Whereas in the United Kingdom, because again, news to people, the French don't have our best interests at heart, old habits and all that.
Yeah.
But they just let the prices just rise with the free market, which means that the steelworks at Scunthorpe, on top of net zero, on top of the job losses, it's really struggling to make a profit or turn over a profit because the energy prices are just so astronomically high.
So we were subsidizing the French energy cap, essentially.
Could put it like that if you wanted to.
So between the French, the Chinese, and Mr. Biden's inflationomics, our steel industry, what little was left of it, the zombie of our steel industry is getting completely stomped out.
Yes, more or less.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, sorry, that is quite the downer, which is why I thought I'd put it before the magazine. But
it's funny, though, because there is a broader thing about when you nationalise companies and when you don't. And everyone seems to have a fairly strong opinion on it. How can you be on the right and be for nationalising anything,
yes,
for example? Or you're insane not to nationalise things because we've all seen that the markets are screwed over from New York. So a real patriot would, not the leftist, not the Corbyn types, a proper patriot would nationalise things in order to protect them. And it's like, well, I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know.
But this is this is my general thesis with all of this information, that it shouldn't be unreasonable for us to, one, have all of our industry owned domestically by British companies, and second of all, we shouldn't be relying on foreign energy companies either to obviously,
of course,
this is just, as you say, that I don't think there's any problem with nationalising these things.
It might not make sense in the purely abstract realm of economic theory.
Yes.
And of course, if you're going to put price caps on things, then they've had terrible side effects in the past.
Yeah, of course.
But from the perspective of national security,
Yes.
you do have to take common sense steps to mean that you're not completely dependent entirely on foreign interests.
Yes.
And by being foreign interests, by definition, they are not your own national interests. They do not have your national interests in mind. Even if it is just that a foreign company is seeking to make a profit, that doesn't mean that they're going to be seeking a profit with the most pure, with the best methods for your country.
Machiavelli talks about this sort of stuff. He was mainly talking about really mercenaries and armies, but the same does apply to sort of key industries like steel or your railways and things. That if you let a foreign entity control it, that's a slippery slope, a very steep slippery slope to you getting screwed over. It's just not a good idea. There's, like you say, there's the purely economic theory side of things that only a red would nationalise certain industries, but it's that, or China's going to own it anyway.
See,
and the global economy, it's
yeah. So I saw an amazing quote the other day. I forget who it was from, but I've been using it since, which is just fantastic. Which is poking a bit of fun at the pure economic theory, which is yes, that might work in practice, but does it work in theory?
Right, yeah.
And that's the way that a lot of people tend to approach these things, where if you're talking about operating in the real world, in the real global economy, when you're a real nation surrounded by other real nations that don't have all of your best interests in mind, little touch of pragmatism here and there can't hurt. But of course, this is all made 10 times worse by net zero as well.
Of course, yes. This is also inflicted by our own government.
Yeah, exactly. So I can talk all I want about how we should have our own national interests in mind, but our leaders don't have our national interests in mind. They have their globalist cabal interests in mind more than anything else.
So you talk about Tata and Modi. He has got India's best interest at heart. I don't know. Is he actually a full nationalist, an Indian nationalist? Is that what he is?
He's generally described as one, but I couldn't stress to know a lot about him.
Yeah, people have crazy different ideas about Modi.
I think
on one end of the spectrum, he's like some sort of saviour figure. On the other end, he's basically a Hitler. Like it's hard to actually get a gauge on the guy. But
I think he's interested in basically spreading India across the entire world, which can only have positive results. I think, I need to double check it, but I think there was some kind of deal struck between India and Russia recently, where Russia is going to allow free movement of Indians into the country without the need of a passport or something. Into Russia. I don't know if that's exactly true, but basically there are moves to try and make sure that Indians can just go anywhere in the world. The entire world will be Modi's India soon, and I can't think of anything worse.
Don't do it, Poot Poot. Don't do it, Vlad. Dear Vlad, don't do it.
When we move into the next segment, I'll double check that. I want to fact check myself, but if that is true, I might.
Yes,
because that'll be the plan for everywhere else that India's dealing with as well. That'll be Modi's plan. We just take a few 100 million Indians. Just let us outnumber your native population by a few 100 million. It'll be fine.
At least we'll solve that dental crisis.
Oh, yeah, thank God.
I wanted to visit St. Petersburg before it was ruined.
But yeah, as you can see, the reason I brought this up is because it's a very important issue, and I don't feel like it gets enough said about it, really, especially seeing as the fact that this is all happening within this year, generally, that things are moving fast and the floor's coming out from beneath our feet, really.
If we were ever in another sort of total war type situation, assuming it's just not a full nuclear exchange and the world falls into a nuclear winter that way, if we was in another World War II type situation, where we were doing sort of strategic bombing, where we would see like Germany's industry, they really need like a ball bearings factory and there's only 2 of them. So if we take those out, that makes all their industry grind to a halt. They really, really need sort of blast furnace facilities or oil refinery facilities, and they've only got 1 or 2 or 3 of them. And if we bomb those, then again we cripple them sort of profoundly.
Right.
Well, again, we'll be in the same, one dirty bomb in Scunny, and it's all over for us. We can't produce anything.
Yeah, they've been through enough, trust me. They don't need another bomb.
Right.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see more of what we're doing, you can check out Connor's series on our website, Tomlinson Talks, and if you want to follow what else we're doing, you can see everything that we do on our Twitter, so make sure to follow us there.